Believe it or not, after just this lesson, you now know 25% of the Spanish language. Sure, you've only learned 15 words, but these 15 words occur so frequently that if you were to black out a page of text that you don't know in a book or a dialogue, you would still know 25% of the words. So 25% of those words would still be showing because they would be these 15 words. The conjunctions y and que, the prepositions de, en, a, and por, the articles el, la, un, and una, the pronouns yo, la, lo, me, and que, and then the adverb no. Before your coaching meeting for lesson 1, to get practice with these words, you'll have some assignments to make sure you really understand how these words are used. But since you're going to be studying how these words are used, let's cover one particularly strange phrasal construct before actually getting to your assignments. In the dialogue that you'll be studying this week, you'll find the phrase la que in the middle of a sentence. Which version of la is that? It's happening right before que, which is a connecting word, so it's not happening before a noun as you would expect if it meant the. But it's also not happening right before a verb as you would expect if it was a direct object pronoun, as in her. So what on earth is it doing here? Well, the fact is that this la does mean the. So it's the sheep pasture scene. That's which la it is. But this is a case where Joel uses the word the, but is too lazy to follow it with a noun. What's being said here is, it's the house that is in a certain place. But instead of saying, it's the house that is, the speaker simply says, it's the that is. In this case, it's clear from the context that the speaker is referring to a house, so he just leaves out the noun and uses the feminine article without the noun, since house happens to be feminine. The house of Juan is the that is two before the of Señor Luis.
La casa de Juan es la que está dos antes de la del señor Luis.
So you'll also see that later in the text where the speaker is saying, it was you the man that was there that day, no? Instead of saying the man that was there, he says the that was there, using the masculine article el and leaving out the word for man. It was you the that was there that day, no?
Eras tú el que estaba ese día, ¿no?
There are two more cases where this happens, but in these cases, instead of the feminine la or the masculine el, the word lo is used. What on earth is going on here? Well, this is a bit of a headache, but although we learned the word lo as a masculine direct object, it also has one more use, and that's as the word the when there's no noun at all. So we've just learned that you can leave out a noun in some cases and just use the appropriate masculine or feminine article. For example, I see the girl that is over there could just be I see la que is over there, if we know we're talking about a girl. Or I see the boy that is over there could be I see el que is over there, if we know we're talking about a boy. But if there's no noun, no masculine or feminine, then the neuter article lo is used. Don't get confused here. Every noun in Spanish is either masculine or feminine with no exceptions. So normally you'll see el or la as an article. But lo is used when there's no noun indicated at all. For example, let's say I want to tell someone, I want what he has. If we're talking about food, as in I want the food that he has, that would be feminine, and I would say I want la que he has. If we're talking about a book, that would be masculine, and I would say, I want el que he has. But if I'm being vague and there's no noun, I can simply say, I want lo que he has. This sounds strange to us, but lo que is very often used where we would use what in English as a connecting word. This actually occurs twice in the dialogue that we're studying. First, life is what it has to be is said, life is lo que it has to be. Life is the that it has to be. The second instance is they're being what they always have been. What is it that they've always been? Well, it doesn't matter. There's no noun. So they are being lo que they always have been. If this is really confusing, just keep the I want what he has example fresh. I want el que he has for masculine. I want la que he has for feminine. Or I want lo que he has for neuter. These are all from the article scene, the sheep pasture scene. The first of your 5 assignments is to go through the quiz, which you'll find linked below this video. You'll be given English phrases and asked to type them as they would be typed in Spanish, so using the words that Joel would use. Now, each time that you type out a Spanish word, you have to think of the scene that that word comes from. For example, if you have to use the word la at any given point, you'll know that it either comes from the article scene, the scene with the sheep pastures, or the direct object scene, which is the scene with a tree. Each one has a completely different meaning. It's the difference between the and her. So make sure that's straight. Every time you use a word, you should know which scene it comes from. Now, you'll be typing out the words, and you should try to get all the spelling and everything correct, including the accents. Click one of these buttons below if you don't know how to do an accent on your keyboard. Your second assignment is to listen to and study the Module 1 dialogue. This is a telephone conversation between two men whose names, Americanized, would be Marcos and Horatio, but in Spanish they're pronounced Marcos and Horacio. Notice again that the letter A in Marcos and Horacio is not really a or ah, but it's more like a cross between a and ah. That's something to get used to and to listen for as you listen to this dialogue. Listen several times and try to imitate the words and phrases exactly as you hear them, even if you don't understand them. See how closely you can mock the accent. The sooner you develop your Joel voice, the sooner you'll be speaking like a native Spanish speaker. Also try to get the dialogue in front of you and study it for every single use of the words that you've just learned. There are a lot of them. In a web browser, you can use the search function to find every instance of each word, or you can just go through the entire dialogue sentence by sentence in order. Right now, you won't know more than about 30% of the words that you see, although you will know all of them for complete comprehension of this story by the end of the 6th lesson. For now, your assignment is to try to piece together the sentence structures to whatever extent you can. For example, whenever you see que without an accent, you know that it's connecting two phrases as the word that, or comparing two items as than. Whenever you see a lo que, you know that that's the equivalent of what as a connector in English, like I want lo que he has. Whenever you see que with an accent, you'll know that it's being used to mean what in a question or an exclamation. As you do this study, you'll probably have some questions about particular uses of the words in the dialogue. In fact, you definitely should have some questions, and you should send them to your coach as soon as they come up. The third assignment is to write your own sentences using all the new words that we've studied. The sentences you write will mostly be in English, but using the few words you know, just like the examples you've seen in the lessons. In fact, the sentences you write should actually be based on the examples you've seen in the lessons and in the dialogue. That way you'll be sure to be learning them correctly. For example, as an example of the word for que, you shouldn't be thinking of the word that in English and the many ways that it's used because it can mean two different things in English. In Spanish, it can only be a connector. A common mistake that we see is trying to use que in an example where you say something like, that is strange. In that case, the English word that is functioning as a noun, not a connector. There's a different Spanish word for that as a noun. But if you base your example of que on this one from the lesson, how nice que it's you, and then make it your own, how strange que my house disappeared, that will be correct. Similarly, if you try to think of the word lo as meaning it, as it did in the case of lo are you able to see, only use it the same way that it's used there. For example, this would be correct. Lo I can hear. I can hear it. That's a correct use of the direct object pronoun. But if you try to use lo to mean it in a different sense, as in it is close to here, that would be completely wrong. Lo cannot be the subject of a sentence. The words in the scene with a tree are used as direct objects. So make sure to write the sentences based on the exact way that they're used in the lessons and in the dialogue. In fact, try to do examples of these words in every single way that you've seen them used in the lessons. The word por, for example, has several uses associated with it. The book is por him, as in the book is by him or written by him. You and I are por the house, as in you and I are near the house. I was there por many years, as in I was there for many years. You should base your own sentence examples for por on all of these. So write those sentences and then send them to your coach or post them in the private group for feedback along with any questions you have before moving on to lesson 2. Again, we should see questions about the dialogue, questions about the lessons, and your own sentence examples of all these words before your coaching and before you move on to lesson 2. The private Facebook group is an important component of the course. Not only is it the fastest way to get feedback on your questions and your sentence examples, it's also an important way to stay involved with the community of focused students who are all dedicated to helping each other meet our fluency goals. We've seen time and time again that the most active community members are the ones who end up doing the best with their Spanish in the end, by far. Now, I'm certainly not going to require you to have Facebook constantly open, which is counterproductive to good study, but to make this assignment a little less abstract, I expect that you'll make at least one post in the group per lesson, and that every time you post something, you'll look through and see what other people have posted and make any comments that you think are helpful. What you post in the group is up to you. There are a few options. If you chose to send your questions and sentence examples to your coach instead of posting them in the group, then you might instead decide to post a study tip or an extra mnemonic that has helped you with this particular lesson. Or you might even write some extra additional sentences for other people to look at and comment. Also in the group, if you see a question that has yet to be answered and you yourself think you know the answer, make sure to respond. Teaching is the best teacher. The fifth thing, of course, is practice. If you're on the popular 3-month plan, you're required to attend 2 extra practice sessions with your group every week. Meet with your fellow students to work through anything that you find difficult. There's no official set agenda for these extra practice sessions, but you can work on pronunciation, grammar concepts, or anything else that you find valuable to practice with other people. For your official coaching session to practice lesson 1 with your coach, the purpose will be to turn everything that you've learned into real speech. So there will be 2 aspects to the coaching on lesson 1. First, we'll give you some sentences in English and ask you quickly to say them the way you would say them in Spanish. Sometimes that will require some restructuring. For example, if we were to say, he found her, you would have to respond with la he found. We're trying to help train you to think fast on your feet and speak properly the way a Spanish speaker would. You want to be ready for this, so prepare accordingly. The second thing we'll do is we'll have you read from the Module 1 dialogue and coach you on pronunciation. Again, the faster you adapt to your Joel voice and are able to imitate the exact pronunciation and intonation that you hear, the more quickly you'll be ready to move into real Spanish conversation.